Hola chicos! In this video, I'm going to talk to you guys about the basic rules of stressed syllables and whether or not they need written accent marks. We'll talk a little bit about accent marks, other uses of them, but mostly we're going to focus on where we stress syllables. So let's start with the most common category, which is a word in Spanish that ends in a vowel, N or S, as you can see right here. If the word ends in a vowel, N or S, which are many words, lots of our nouns, lots of our verbs, especially our verbs, when they're conjugated, are going to fall into that category. You know, if you think about it, think about hablar. Hablar in the yo form present tense, hablo, that's a vowel at the end, right? It's an O. Hablas, there's an S. Habla, there's an A. Hablamos, there's an S. Hablais, there's an S. Hablan, there's an N. So we hit all of those. We had a vowel, we had N, we had S in any of those conjugations. You know, I go to the preterite tense, hablé, hablaste, habló. Those are all vowels. Hablamos, S. Hablastes, S. Hablaron, N. So our conjugations, there's a really common category of word is to have a word that ends in a vowel, N or S. So the natural rule for words that are like that is to stress the second to last syllable. So as you'll notice with the words right here, like aspirina, the second to last syllable is stressed. If you look at all these words, the red syllable, the words that are, or the syllable that is written in the red font, like here, R-I, here, G-R-I-T-O, those red syllables are always the stressed syllables. They're just telling us where actually the stress actually occurs. So that might be useful if you make sure you know that going forward. But this is the stressed syllable of aspirina. Now, what we want to note here is that this is a word that ends in a vowel. The rule in Spanish is when you have a word that ends in a vowel, N or S, is to stress the second to last syllable. So we might look at this word and go, okay, here's the first syllable, here's the second syllable, and here's the third syllable, and here's the fourth syllable. But what works better is for us to work backwards and start from the end, because everything is going to be in relation to the end of the word. So instead of going left to right, we'll go right to left from the end and back. So this syllable right here, this is our last syllable. This right here is our second to last syllable. This one right here is our third to last syllable. And this one right here is our fourth to the end, fourth from last. The transantepenultimate syllable. Now this, again, the last syllable, second to last syllable. This is, you can see the red just showing us that is where the stress syllable should be, or sorry, where the stress syllable actually is. And it actually coincides with where it should be. This syllable is the second to last syllable. This is where the stress is. And because it ends in a vowel, this is where the stress syllable should be. And because of that, we don't write any accent mark here. Aspirina, aspirina. It goes up right there. That's where the inflection is. Aspirina. So there's no need to write an accent mark because it follows the rule for words that end in a vowel, N or S. And if we look at the rest of these in the top row, gripe, the stress syllable is right here on that G-R-I. And because that's where the stress syllable should be, we don't write an accent mark. It's where it should be because it ends in a vowel. And it is the second to last syllable where the stress is. No need for an accent mark. Toman ends in an N. So we've got the N at the end here. So a vowel, N or S. When that's the case, the second to last syllable is where it's stressed. This is toman. The stress syllable is right here on that T-O. And that's the rule. Second to last syllable should have the stress. Since it does, we have no need to write an accent mark there, so we leave it alone. Antes. Antes. Stress is on that first syllable, the second to last syllable. It ends in an S. Any word that ends in a vowel, N or S, should have the stress syllable as the second to the last. And this is where it is, so no need to write an accent mark. Now let's look at some of the exceptions. Now you notice here, asi ends in a vowel. And because it has a vowel at the end, the rule is it should be on the second to last, which is right here. It is not, however. And since it is not, that is why there is an accent mark written right here. don't know if you can see it all that well, but there is definitely, instead of a dot on that I, it's an accent mark. And our accent marks in Spanish are always going to go, they're going to go up and to the right in that direction, always. We don't have any that go down and to the right. They're always going up and to the right. So all accent marks are the same. All accent marks will look just like that in Spanish. So in other languages, you may have seen other directions, but in Spanish, they're always going to go like that. Let's look at the next one, Inglés. Inglés, the stress is on that glés, on the last syllable, but it ends with an S. And since it ends in a S, it's supposed to be here on the second to last syllable, but because it's not where you pronounce it, you stress it right here. Because it violates the natural rule of being the second to last, we have to mark that with a written accent mark. So we put an accent mark on that vowel, Inglés, on the E. Infección, and any word that ends in sion, S-I-O-N or C-I-O-N, are going to have a stress syllable on the end. And they all end in the letter N, right? Sion. So if they end in those last four letters are C-I-O-N or S-I-O-N, we are going to write an accent mark on the O because the stress is on that sion syllable. And if it's on that syllable, that's the last syllable here. So when we, the stress should be here on the second to last by our natural rule, but since it breaks that natural rule, we mark that with a written accent mark. Héroe, same thing, but instead of it being the last syllable it's stressed, it's not the second to last syllable it's stressed, it's the third from the end. The third from last syllable, the antepenultimate syllable has the stress, is the stress syllable, and because of that, we mark that with a written accent mark, héroe, héroe. We stress the third from last. So that's where the stress syllable is, and because it's not where it should be, we note that with writing an accent mark above the vowel. Okay, now, while I'm here on this one, I'm going to try to show you another word. So let's say we have infecciones. Now, in this word, we still have our normal syllables like we have in the other one, right? We've got our first, really this is our, going back from the end. This is our fourth from last syllable, our third from last syllable, our second from last syllable, and our last syllable. So I made this plural. And when I did that, what I did was I added a syllable. Our stressed syllable is still right here. This is still our stressed vowel. And you might be thinking we would need the accent mark there, but actually, because remember, a word that ends in a vowel, N or S, which this is an S, it should be on the second to last syllable, which is where it is. So now that we made this word plural, oops, sorry, I got rid of it. But now that we made the word plural, I'm going to just do this. I'll type it over again. It actually follows the rule of this ending with an S should be on the second to last syllable. It is. So now infección, when it's singular, is going to have a written accent mark on the O. But when it's plural, it falls back into line and there's no need for an accent mark anymore. So but again, because it actually follows the natural rule. All right, let's move on to some other types of words. So these are everything we went over so far was for words that end in a vowel, N or S. Now we're going to work with every other ending, of which there are many. But you can see right here, we've got an L at the end, a Z, an R, and an R. We're going to have lots of R words because of our infinitives. We work with verbs a lot. So infinitives, they always end with the letter R. So they're always going to, what the rule for the infinitive is to stress the last syllable. Words that don't end in a vowel, N or S. So any other word, any other consonant, or any other word that ends in a consonant that's not an N or an S is going to fall into this category. So again, this first category, these first two rows, anything that ends with a vowel, N or S. These last two rows are going to be words that don't end in either of those letters. So the rule for these words is to stress the last syllable. So we're going to stress the last syllable of all of these words. Well, that's what we want to stress. If it breaks that rule, then we're gonna write a written accent mark. So hospital, The last syllable is stressed, ends with an L. That's not a vowel, that's not an N, that's not an S. And since it is the stress, if it's one of those words, the stress should be on the last syllable. It is, so there's no need to write an accent mark. Nariz, this is not a vowel, N or S, so the rule is it should be on the last syllable. It is, that's where the stress syllable is. And because of that, we don't write an accent mark. Recitar, tar is where the stress syllable is. It's the last syllable, which is where it should be since it ends with an R and not a vowel, N or S. Toser, same thing. Our infinitives are going to be like that, right? We're going to stress the last syllable because they end in R, not a vowel, not an N, not an S. So stress that last syllable, toser. And because we do stress the last syllable like we're supposed to, there's no need to write an accent mark. Now here on these words, they end in, we have a Z, an L, and a T, and an R. These are exceptions. Now these are all words that don't end in a vowel, N or S. They should be on the last syllable, but because they're on the second to last syllable, and actually all of these is on the second to last syllable, we have to write an accent mark because it should be right here. It's not, it's lapis, lapis, the inflection's on that la syllable. And since that's the case, we have to write an accent mark. Now in that one, you might remember doing this before, but if we were to make this plural and we had lapises, now this syllable that's stressed right here is the third from last. It still breaks our rule, so we do need an accent mark still. So lapises, when we make it plural, we added a syllable to it, but it doesn't matter. It still breaks the rule. It should be on the last syllable, and it's not on that syllable, so it still is going to require an accent mark in this case. Football, on the second to last syllable, so we need to write an accent mark since it doesn't end in a vowel, N or S. It should be here on this last syllable here. Same thing, huésped, it should be on the PED syllable. It's not, so we write an accent mark. And suéter, it's on, it should be TER where it should be stressed by our natural rule, but it's not, so we write an accent mark on it. So there's our main rules when it comes to where, which syllable is stressed, which is our most common use of using accent marks is to tell us which syllable should be stressed. And when it is with words that end in a vowel, N or S, it should be on the second to last syllable. If it's not, we need to write an accent mark. On any other type of word, it should be on the last syllable. And if it's not, we write an accent mark. So here is our most common use of using accent marks in Spanish.